To get more info on that game and what we can expect, we're going to talk to Adam Amin, voice of the Bears for this preseason, also NFL and MLB play-by-play announcer for Fox, voice of the Chicago Bulls. Sean, he's a DJ. Adam Amin, he kind of does it all. Adam, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today, especially with how busy your schedule must be at all times. But overall, with the Bears tomorrow, how surprised were you to hear that Caleb Williams and the starters won't be playing?
Not too surprised, and I'm always interested to see how each coach goes about this because it's so varied amongst coaches, and it's become very, very specific. I think there was always this uniform policy in maybe even 10 years ago when there was a 4 preseason game slate, and so I was like, well, the first game the starters will play a little bit, and then the second game they'll play a little more, and then the third game's our dress rehearsal, and then the fourth game is all the backups who are fighting for jobs. And it was always this rhythm to the preseason. Preseason now, and I've noticed this probably in the last 7 years of calling preseason games, that it's so varied based on organization. I was reading up on the Dolphins a little bit too, the Bears' opponent, and Mike McDaniel is saying he would like to play some of his starters. And I saw a note that said Tua Tagovailoa hasn't played in a preseason opener in 4 years. So it's so varied amongst organization, where are injury issues, where are guys looking in terms of trying to limit their snap counts and some of their, full padded plays over the course of a 2-month period. So I'm not shocked. Nothing surprises me by any means. And I'm also trying to temper my own expectations because I think fans have a tendency to go, well, if the team is bad in week 1, 2, and 3, and the starters didn't play in the preseason, then that somehow has to equate to the starters have to play in the preseason. I don't think that's true. I don't think those two things are necessarily correlated. I think it's very specific to each organization, but I'm always interested to see what the coach's process is to get there, especially when it's a first-year coach like Ben Johnson.
Adam, speaking of Ben Johnson, how much time have you spent with him? Are you impressed so far with how he's been going about his business? I think a lot of the fans, including myself, are chomping at the bit to see him in the starters in the preseason games because all we hear about in practice is intensity,
mm-hmm.
hitting. So it's like, okay, well, let's see it over at Soldier in the preseason game. We won't get that opportunity, it seems like. But what do you think of Ben so far? And I mean, it's widely known. It seems like he came here because of Caleb, and now the proof's going to be in the pudding.
I think it's been so surprising to me to hear about all this intensity, right? Like, knowing Ben, I haven't spent any time with him in this offseason. Like, I've gone and checked out the team, but I haven't, sat down with him one-on-one. I spent a lot of time with him over the last 3 years since he's been the coordinator, since he was the coordinator for the Lions, just calling games for Fox. And he's so mild-mannered. He's this self-described math geek. He was a walk-on quarterback at North Carolina. He was really focused on his studies. He was interning at an accounting firm at one point or something like that before he got into coaching. So he describes himself as this kind of math geek. And he was so mild-mannered in those meetings when he was just the offensive coordinator. And then you saw his head coach, right, Dan Campbell. He's got this intensity. We're going to bite your kneecaps, all this type of stuff about how intense his practices are and the physicality they bring to the game. So to see Ben kind of take on that personality has been really surprising to me. Not in a bad way. Just I didn't know that that's what was inside of Ben when he stepped into this type of position as the head coach of a founding franchise of the NFL. I think it's fascinating to see. I know him as a really intelligent guy, and I just know him as a guy who really thinks up of great schemes. When Detroit was really rolling last year, you saw it in the Bears game at Soldier Field. These kind of stumbling trick plays, and they can go deep into their bag, and they lean on that great offensive line. Like, you're hoping those elements will translate over into the Bears offense. And you hope that just by sheer personnel, you got a little better on the offensive line. You got great skill position players, and Caleb Williams is in year 2. You hope just the personnel alone combined with Ben Johnson being a great play caller, you hope that, as you said, the proof should be in the pudding by the time you get to the end of the season. And hopefully this is a team that's averaging something like 25 to 27 points a game, which is a great jump over league average.
Adam, I mean, everything that's come out of Bears camp so far and everything you just spoke about, Ben Johnson, like, it's all very positive. There's a growth, a step forward that this team has made, but this is still a first-year head coach with a quarterback that didn't really have a whole lot of coaching last year. So how realistic is it that the Bears can hit the ground running and have a successful season?
I think it's certainly realistic in the sense of it's possible, right? Like, I think just what we talked about, this is a better team than I think it was a year ago. I think the personnel is a little bit better. I think the coaching took a big jump, at least in terms of what you expect on the offensive end. I certainly think they got better defensively with Dennis Allen, whom I've always been a big fan of, especially as a coordinator. He had a couple of rough stretches as a head coach, whether it was with the Raiders or with the Saints. But as a coordinator, he's got a great track record. So I think the team and the personnel are just better. So it's certainly realistic that they could come out of the gate, firing on a lot of cylinders. The problem with that, or the concern against that concept, is the NFC North. And I just came back from Los Angeles where we had our seminar, our NFL seminar. And I listened to Tom Brady and Greg Olson and Mark Sanchez and Moose Johnston and Charles Woodson and all these great football minds talk about the league. And all of them to a T said they think the NFC North is the best division in football. And it's hard to argue with that, right? You got three teams that all had double-digit wins, all went to the playoffs in Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. And those teams, I don't think, got worse. You can make, and I haven't done the deep dive on Minnesota. I know the J.J. McCarthy situation is interesting. The Packers tried to draft at wide receiver. The Lions lost some key personnel, but that doesn't mean those teams aren't going to be great again. And I think the Bears are in just such a tough division that you hope that personnel is ready to match the intensity of those other three teams, because those other three teams have an established coach. They have an established quarterback in Green Bay and Detroit. They have defenses that have made their name with physicality. So I think it's realistic that they could play right out of the gate, but your first two games are against the division, and that's not an easy task when you're playing in arguably the best division in football.
Yeah, Adam, I think when we go back and talk about the intensity thing and Ben Johnson not necessarily being that, he absolutely has surrounded himself with intense guys. Dennis Allen, like you mentioned, intense guy. Defense has always been nasty throughout his years in the league. Eric Bieniemy is an intense guy. Antoine Randall, intense guy. Yep. So he's filling that gap, and he's trying to have those guys bring something that he doesn't. Let's go to the most important man.
I think that's true.
Yeah, let's go to the most important man, who is Caleb Williams. What do you think he needs to improve on most coming in? Is it on the field? Is it off the field? I think he got an extremely raw deal last year with the coaching staff, and having to hear two different voices on offense and learn just multiple different things. He still threw for almost 3,500 yards and had a lot of flashes. I think people are forgetting about some of the flashes that he did show in a very unfortunate situation. What do you think he needs to improve most?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think that's a lot of tumult just in the coaching carousel that he dealt with. Two different coordinators, two different head coaches, actually three different coordinators, Waldron, Brown, and then Chris Beatty. Then you had Thomas Brown calling plays. You had Matt Eberflus fired after Thanksgiving, all that stuff. So it's as good a situation as we thought he was going into. The coaching did not help that cause. So I think all that is kind of going to be settled down. He's already spoken very highly about working with an offensive-minded head coach, much like he did in his 3 years of college. He worked with Lincoln Riley, who was the head coach and the coordinator and play caller and offensive creator and guru. And I think that's a relationship that Caleb Williams is much more comfortable with. So I'm less concerned about that this year. I know that part of the reason he got sacked, not the whole reason, part of the reason he got sacked so many times last year, he got sacked 68 times. That's 26 more than any other quarterback in the league last year. Or 60 more, I should say. He can't hold on to the ball as long as he did. Again, I think part of that was play calling, part of that was protection, part of that was scheme, and part of that was Caleb himself. But I think that's something important to remember. Pass protection and sack numbers are not just on the offensive line. They're not just on the quarterback. They're on a combination of things. So if he does his part, and I think Ben Johnson will help him out with some of the progression stuff, they were trying to make him into a progression quarterback, and I don't think it worked out particularly well last year. So whatever scheme Ben Johnson comes up with, I think is going to be a Caleb Williams advantage. And to that point, he cannot hold the ball as long as he did. This offensive line, if it's going to play better than it did a year ago, that means you got 3 to 4 seconds to be able to make a decision. And that's plenty of time in the NFL. 2.5 seconds is your average time from snap to pass. So if you got 3-4 seconds that your offensive line is holding up, that's great. But you got to make a decision. You have to be more decisive. And I think that's the main thing I'm looking at for Caleb, who I imagine will get some reps in the next couple of games. Obviously, he's not going to play this week.
Sean Little, Kate Constable here on the Bettor Angle. We're talking with Adam Amin, voice of the Bears this preseason. Also, you can hear him calling NFL and Major League Baseball games for Fox. Adam, you're one of the busiest people that, I don't know you personally, but I follow you. And you got something different going on every single day. One of those being you're a DJ. We have got about a minute left here. Do you have any new DJ gigs coming up?
I just played my first festival a couple of weeks ago, so that was the big event at the end of the in summer that I was looking forward to playing. I'll play a couple of club gigs, I think, in August and September, and then once you get into NBA, NFL crossover, I'm really more focused on that stuff and traveling and trying to get ready for all the games. But I appreciate you mentioning it. It's something that's fun for me. It's important to me. When I was younger, it's become more important to me now as an adult, as a creative outlet, and I'm just thankful that I get to do it. And what a lucky life to get to run around, call games, and get to do something creative on the side too.
Well, Sean and I listen to you a lot on the Bulls being here in Chicago, obviously, the other games that you call, but maybe we got to make it to the club sometime, Sean, and check out Adam DJ.
Dude, I need the behind the booth access though. I can't. You gotta hook us up.
Done and done, my friend. No problem at all.
Adam, we appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy the game tomorrow. We'll talk to you down the road.
See you, Adam.
Appreciate you guys. See you guys.